Hi, Rico. A pleasure to have you on the podcast. Very excited to be hearing more about your experience with community and community building and getting into some details. But before we do, would you like to introduce yourself and who you are?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'm Rico Nasol. I'm an executive coach, but the community I'm helping build is actually a nonprofit community called NAP. And I am in the Las Vegas chapter. So NAP is the National Association of Asian American Professionals, and I am the Director of Executive Development. And so, just like it says, we're an API professional leadership community that we're building as a support system for all the API folks that are out there.
Incredible. It sounds like you really captured all the elements of who you are and what you do and what the community is about. But if there's anything else you want to add at this stage
Yeah,
before we
so
get into details.
yeah, we focus on just maybe really quick. We focus on three things. One is um, professional development. So we want to make sure that people have all the tools, and oftentimes, inside companies, they don't give you all the tools to develop yourself as a leader. So we focus on professional development. We focus on giving back. So we do a lot of community service. And then we focus on networking. So we want to continue to expand the API network here in Las Vegas. NAP's been around for since like the 80s.
Mm.
And
Well,
there are, I believe there's 40 chapters in the US and Canada. So it's a big organization, but I'm
mm.
most focused on building the Las Vegas chapter.
Amazing. Is it mostly in person or is it geographically located but online more for accessibility? How's it set up?
Yeah, so we're mostly, the events we put on are mostly in person, but I do put on, since I do workshops and professional development, I actually do events with other chapters. Like I've done events with San Jose, I've done events on the national level. But most of the events I participate in are here in the Las Vegas area. So in person, we just had a happy hour on Wednesday, where like 40 some odd people came out.
Hmm.
We had a fun networking game. People got to know each other. It was fun.
Sounds lovely. NAP sounds amazing. And so nice to
It
be
is
part of a broader network too that's like very well
Yeah,
established.
it is. So there was a Vegas chapter years ago, but it kind of dissolved. And then 3 years ago, Joyce C, who's the president, kind of brought the chapter back. And so currently we have about 170 members in the Las Vegas area. So and
Mm.
growing slowly, but growing.
40 people of 170 people turning up. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and actually a lot of those were new member signups. So yeah, we're continuing to expand. So that number might be a little bit more now.
Amazing. That's so great. Cool. Yeah, NAP sounds great. I'm excited to ask you lots of questions about NAP and how it works for you. Um, yeah, is there a story that you have, like a personal story of how you got involved in NAP and why you care about NAP and why you feel drawn to being in a community building role with them?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So I'll go back to my corporate career. So I spent 20 plus years working at places like Zappos, Netflix, things like that. And the thing that I was lucky and also unlucky in is I was lucky to have some good leaders around me, um, where they poured into me and they invested in me. The unfortunate thing is none of them looked like me. Um, and so there was this huge gap that I saw in just the API community. I didn't see many leaders like me until maybe my last 2 or 3 years at Netflix. The VP I reported to was actually a Japanese American, um, and you could say like Tony Hsieh was an example. And I worked with Tony, but he was the CEO. Everyone else around him, though, there weren't a lot of people of color.
He's the
So
CEO of Zappos, yes? Is that our
yeah, he
previous
was the
CEO?
CEO. A
Yeah.
lot of people think he was the founder. Nick Swinmurn was actually the founder. Tony was the first investor, and he came on. He invested in 99 and he came on as a CEO in 2000. But yeah, so for the longest time, he was the only example to me of a minority leader. And he was very introverted. He was very much like me, very introverted. He didn't say much. So I didn't have a lot of examples of what strong Asian American leaders look like until like my final couple years at Netflix. So for me, like that is a big thing. Like one of the people on my team, when I left, he gave me this amazing feedback. He said he never thought that because he's a Filipino uh, and he said that I never thought that, as a Filipino American, I could ever be like have a big role somewhere until he saw me. And so for me, that impacted me a lot because I was just trying to do the best I could and be the best leader I could. Never focused really on climbing the corporate ladder, but just doing right by the business and by the team. And so when he said that to me, I really took it to heart. And when I saw Nap as an opportunity, that feedback rings true to me as like, if we had more examples of API leaders in the community, would I have a different career? Could he have had a different career trajectory? So that was the kind of my personal corporate background behind it. The other reason I joined NAP was partly because of the pandemic. So um, pre-pandemic, I would always be into networking, always recruiting, because growing my teams, I was always looking for new talent to continue to grow my team. So I was used to doing panels, networking events, conferences, all these things. And then the pandemic happened and everything stopped and everything went virtual. And it made me fall back into some of my old habits of like introversion, um, I don't need to go out and network. I don't need to go meet new people. So I kind of got comfortable in that way. And then in 2023, while building my own coaching practice, I got reflective and like, why am I so allergic? Why am I so against networking and being out there? Like it's something I used to be good at and do a lot of. So I tried to find an Asian American professional development community, and NAP was the most interesting to me. So in September of 23, I went to a happy hour. Um, ended up joining. Uh, I was so impressed with the things they were building. It was smaller then, but I was impressed and I wanted to continue to make an impact in our community. And so I was pretty active as a member. And then by that December, they were like, "So you're gonna be on the board, and we want you to do this." And I was like, "I guess. Are you telling me I'm gonna be on the board? Or are you asking me I'm gonna be on the board?" Um, so yeah, I was happy to do it, and so I've been on the board ever since.
Mm, amazing. It's really refreshing to hear you talk about being an introvert and a community builder and seeing the how like the pandemic has shaped so many of us in how we socialize and how we connect with each other, and that there was a community that existed where you're like, oh, this is my invitation back into being local and being in community in some capacity and finding that again for yourself. So I think that's really refreshing because a lot of people, I imagine, relate to being an introvert, but also wanting to build community and not necessarily finding pathways into how to do that in a supported way. So,
Yeah, and a lot of it is, I mean, you have a coaching background, and I am a coach, and so I talk to a lot of people and help them work through a lot of these fears. But then being reflective is like, okay, so I should look in the mirror when I'm asking some of these questions. And so if I'm gonna talk the talk, I need to walk the walk. And it was a little uncomfortable at first because it felt foreign because I hadn't done it in, 3 years. But once you get back into the swing of things, like the muscle memory comes back and, and all the fears, I call it false expectations appearing real. Like all the fears that you tell yourself, all the stories that you tell yourself don't happen. They don't come true. Um, so it's really just about what is it you're so afraid of, and then knowing that like the odds of that of happening are really low, if at all.
yeah, we could get pretty creative with the possibilities.
Hmm. Yeah.
I'm curious of you saying that coming into this network that's been around since the 80s, and did you say 40 different places?
Yeah.
It's a really big established network in so many ways, and yet your local chapter wasn't established or well, it wasn't active recently. And I'm curious what the potential, if there were challenges, I imagine there were challenges of rebuilding that together and how that looked to build a community inside an existing network that maybe had support, but in other ways perhaps brought unique challenges. Do you have anything to share about that?
Yeah. So with that, there was a reason why it dissolved, and I think the initial support from the national, um, representation and the rest of the chapters wasn't there for the Las Vegas chapter to continue to grow and thrive. So unfortunately, it went away. Um, but that didn't mean the need was gone. So when Joyce identified that need, we had to find a way to continue to grow and with or without national support, because there's chapters that are, a few hundred people strong and they're much larger chapters. But we kind of had to act like a startup and operate in this place of, well, those chapters are big, but they're not going to help us grow. We have to kind of grow on our own. So we had to develop our own systems within the NAP environment. So, like for example, we talked about this in the pre-show, but um, we're on Silk Start where there's some limitations on Silk Start, but it's because we have an account through the national association. Um, but if I had my choice, I would do something different. But the limitations of a nonprofit community is you kind of have to work with the tools and the things you're given. So that's kind of been a challenge. Um, but we're working through it. Also, branding is inconsistent across the different chapters. So um, even colors and logos that like San Jose, Boston, Chicago, like all these different places, there's differences. Kansas City, there's slight differences between them all. We're getting much better at that, but that's a challenge for Las Vegas because we're trying to adhere to a national standard. But then when people are like, oh, I didn't know there was nap in Kansas City, well, they look a little different, and it's a little different. It's there, but it's a little bit different. So that's been a challenge for us. But things that at a national level we met earlier this year as a national team, and we're trying to figure out how to rectify some of these things.
Cool. You said act like a startup. Is there two or three things that come to mind of how you had to act like a startup, a non-profit startup within an existing bigger network?
Yeah, so I mean, all the roles are volunteer, right? So you kind of have to put on all the hats. So yeah, I'm a director of executive development. I do a lot of the workshops and stuff like that, but I also do some of the marketing. I do some of the social. I do some of the event planning, right? Like we kind of all have to put these different hats on. And then we all have to be active in like texting our network when there's an event coming up and finding partners that we can work with. So we're all doing each other's jobs, very much like a startup. A startup, it's hard to be a specialist if you're in a startup because you haven't reached the size where you need specialists yet. If you've ever worked in a startup, you need really, really high functioning generalists because you never know what jobs need to get done. And so National has very specialist roles. They have like an admin that handles like national events. They have a national marketing person. They have like, so at the national level, the size they are, they have specialists. But since we're still growing, we need to just, as a board, just jump in where we need to. So I don't do partner relationships, but I'll help with it if we need to. Yeah. So that's the if anyone's been in the startup, they know what that feeling's like.
Mm, that seems like very good advice is high functioning specialists for a
Hmm.
startup and something I'm sure many people hearing that so clearly is helpful to understand for people who are in a similar position to you trying to build their own communities.
Yeah, and
And
that's probably the biggest thing, right? When you're building a community early, it's just like a startup. Like you can't be afraid to do whatever needs to be done. So if there's three of you and you're all introverts, it's going to be hard if you are not comfortable coming out of that shell and actually doing community outreach and doing the things that it's going to take to build the community. Because it's going to be hard in the beginning. You can't just have an event and expect people to show up. Um, if it were that easy, like there'd be tons of communities, but it's easier said than done.
is there any particular challenges that you experienced in the first year that you think would be helpful for other people to hear, even if it's to normalize the challenges?
Yeah, so some of the things that um were hard is like when you don't have a lot of people, so we're a lot of members, and I was putting on these workshops, but there wasn't a lot of feedback. So um it's hard to understand like what feedback to listen to. So I put on a workshop on like public speaking with confidence. And so like, that's a very generic, general, like, and how to storytell, general professional development workshop. And so like, hey, what would you like to see? A part two of this or like this and that? And so I got feedback, and based on the people that attended, I was like, okay, then I'll do that. And then I put together a workshop for what they requested, and then nobody signed up for that. So it's like those are challenges that like you're getting feedback from a small amount of people, um, and understanding what to react to, what not to react to. And we didn't have a foundation of workshops yet. So we do now. So now we have like foundational workshops. Like these are the workshops that we're going to do, 4 workshops we're going to do throughout the year, like the public speaking and storytelling. Because no matter what part you are in your career, where you are in your career, that's going to be helpful. And then we supplement that with some kind of parallel ones, like how do you leverage AI on a personal and professional level? Like that's something new that we're doing. That's not part of the core foundational program. But that was a challenge. Like it's kind of like throwing spaghetti at a wall. Like what are people gonna react to? What are people gonna like? Because we don't know for sure when you have a small sample size to work with.
So getting feedback on the experiments in the first year was one of the biggest challenges you experienced.
Yeah, that was the biggest challenge for me, and I'm still working through it. So I've only been on the board for 2 years now. So we're still working through some of that. And by no means have we solved it, and it still continues to be a challenge.
Sounds like you have great engagement, as you're saying, with the 40 people and the chapter's growing, and that it seems like there's definitely a need. As you said, it wasn't existing before, not because it wasn't needed, but I'm curious. We've been talking more about the structure and the processes of community, but I'd love to hear about the people and the values and how you create a sense of belonging based on values and shared identity or shared desires and needs. What does that look like? Do you have a vision or words, or how do you speak to that when you're together?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm glad you bring it up because that's the main thing. So the three things that are most important and for me for building community, belonging is the number one thing, right? If people don't feel like this is a place for them, then they're not going to come back. The second thing is value. So like making sure that they're getting something, there's something that they're taking away from every event, whether that's meeting a new person, taking away some new knowledge, some tools for them to get better, or feeling like they found an ally or a support system, right? So you want to make sure that they're taking those things away. And then finally, consistency, right? We have to show up. So we can't say we're going to do all these things and then throw one event a year. So we need to be consistent in how we show up. So that belonging being the most important, those other two pieces are how we create that belonging, right? So we show up consistently. Like we have personal development events at least once a quarter. We have happy hour events at least once a quarter. There's something going on at least every month from our community that people can look forward to, whether it's playing pickleball and running and going hiking, being active, having some drinks and networking and meeting new people, or sitting down and having deep discussions about like how to continue to grow as a professional. Like those are the three things that we focus on. It's kind of natural selection. You'll find people that have been looking for that because one thing we have going for us could be positive or negative in the Las Vegas area. It's a very transient town. So you're very hard pressed to find someone who's born and raised and spend their whole life here in the Las Vegas area. So a lot of the folks that join, they're looking for that community that maybe they had back home. Like I'm from the Bay Area, I was born and raised in the Bay Area. I lived there most of my life. Uh, our president is born and raised in New York, like in the Queens area, and so I don't know that any of our members, there's probably a few, that are born and raised and been in Vegas all their lives. So we create that community where they can come. It's very familiar because we have a lot of the family and cultural values are very similar when you talk about Asian American cultures. So we already have that kind of bonds us, and we're all looking for professional development. We all like are trying to do better for ourselves, for our community. So all of those things bind us, and then we consistently show up. So if you can provide all those three things for your community, I think it'll be much easier and be a thriving community.
Mm. Is there ways that you explicitly speak to the values of belonging and value and consistency when you're hosting the events? Or is that something that's more for the board and how you operate and orient towards them?
Yeah, so it's not something that we say like every time like hey we want to create a sense of belonging. I mean we go through the like these kind of values in the very beginning because there's oftentimes every event we have new people. So we have like a 2 minute like this is kind of what NAP's about. These are our values. We focus on leadership development, belonging and networking. Uh, and so we do that every time, but we don't reiterate it. It's more of the action. So we want to facilitate uh, environments that are conducive to this. So just like any other networking events, we'll do like fun games where like it kind of breaks down the walls. You get to know each other, right? Um, in my corporate life, I always focused on heart first because if you can win their hearts, you can win their minds. So it's the same approach with building communities. So if people feel comfortable, they feel like trust, they can trust the people around them, then they'll do anything for that community. So we do a lot of heart-centered, like whether it's a workshop, we start with, you know, not too personal, but personal questions so people can get to know each other a little bit better. In the network events, we want people to get to know each other as people first before professionals because they're more likely to enjoy each other if they know who you are instead of like what you are. So that's how we kind of create this sense of belonging and we build trust.
That's a beautiful way of framing like the heart-centered belonging of hearts first and then minds and a way to build trust. I think trust is such a huge part of community building that people hope for but don't necessarily know how to cultivate in very explicit ways. Is there any other thoughts that you have about trust building other than what you just shared of being heart-centered and heart first and then mind?
Uh, I mean, it goes back to the consistency, right? And just showing up when you show up when you say you're going to show up. And then also don't let them forget about you uh, and make everybody feel comfortable. So like that's another thing as board members. Um, we don't stick to like we try not to stick to the same people every time because we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome. So in the 40 people that showed up on Wednesday, I didn't speak to all of them in depth, but I probably spoke to like, 12, 15 people in depth, just myself. And each board member did the same, right? And I at least introduced myself to everybody. So I at least heard everybody's name. Will I remember it? I'm not great with names, but the more I see them, the more we build a relationship, I'll be much better. But at least I want everybody to know my name. I want to know everybody's name and know that they're welcome. Welcome them with a handshake and a smile, whatever they're comfortable with. So that's that's the thing I would say. Along with the other things we talked about, it's a great way to build trust. Is just always show up and always be welcoming. Um, and there's a lot of, to be honest, there's a lot of non-Asian American Pacific Islanders that show up to our events, which I love. And it makes me feel good because they at least want to see what's going on with the community. They want to be allies for the community, or sometimes they just want to hang out and have a good time.
Yeah, you mentioned doing social events. Is there a way that you structure the cadence of value, like professional value focused events compared to social events? Do you have an approach to that, or is it more just sort of listening to feedback and iterating as you go?
So we have happy hours every other month, and then we have professional development events once a quarter, and then we'll sprinkle in some ad hoc ones. And then on off months, we have like we're not doing happy hours, we have like volunteer events. So whether it's like packing food or we'll host a dinner for a partner community, um, things like that. And then what other events do we do? Those are the majority of our events. Sorry, you went in and out for a second.
Really?
Yeah, I thought you froze. But yeah, so those are the majority of our events. But we have set events, and we try to put out the calendar. We try to have the calendar. Trying to run like a startup. So we like to have our next year calendar done by like October and November. So and over the summer, this summer, we're gonna have our board meeting and we're gonna talk about what our 2026 plans will look like, how many new partnerships we want to do. We put on maybe like 3 or 4 really, really large events with like partners every year. So like we did something with Area 15 here, which is like a big venue. We had 2 other partners. We had like karaoke, catering. A robotics nonprofit brought out like a robot that people could drive. So we do big events like that. But we save that for like AAPI Heritage Month. So that was that event. We did that in May. So
Great.
yeah, we have a set calendar of events.
Amazing. I'm very impressed with how ahead of the planning you all are and being strategic about partnerships and strategic timing and so and I think that that would be really helpful for people to hear more about is partnerships and if there's sponsorships involved in any ways or tips that you have, because many people express that that can be quite intimidating to
Hmm.
navigate or know how to begin even the conversation. So, do you have
Yeah.
any insight on that?
Yeah, so Joyce does a lot of our sponsorships, but we talk about it all the time, and it's a blessing and a curse. So the blessing part is we are in Las Vegas, where there's a lot of casinos here. You can say that's a blessing and curse, but they have their own like ERGs, and they all call them something different. And we're lucky
Would you
because those.
please explain what ERGs are for
Oh
people
yeah,
who may
sorry.
not
Yeah,
know?
for people that know, like employee resource group. So they're affinity groups within businesses. So oftentimes you'll like at Netflix we had AEN, which is the Asian Employee Network. We had Black At, which is the African American Employee Network. We had Pride at Netflix. So we had different affinity groups that had their own communities within the business. So here there are various API ERGs within the different casinos, and a lot of them are based here in Las Vegas. So we have some partnerships with some of the big casinos here, like MGM, the Caesars family. So that's been good for us. So we've been able to partner with those. Um, the thing that's hard, it's hard thing we've wanted to do, and it's harder to find, is like corporate partnerships to put on events. So sponsorship is one thing. So we have sponsors where they'll say, "Hey, we'll buy 25 memberships, and we'll donate this amount of money." So like that's what the casinos usually do. They'll say, "Hey, we'll pay for like 20 memberships, and we'll give you like $5,000 for the year in kind or something." So like we can use that for events on their properties, things like that. So that we've been lucky enough to get, and that's helped us. But getting corporate sponsorships for like if we want to put on an event like the API Heritage Month, it's harder for us to find sponsorship. So like we wanted to partner with Nike or something like that. Like we don't even know where to begin when it comes to those things, and that's what makes it harder. So if we could find a way to make that part easier, that would be fantastic. It's easy it's easy to approach companies with ERGs because they already understand to a degree that these affinity groups need support. Um, but when you're looking at like, hey, I need someone to sponsor this with dollars and like whatever equipment and products, that's a whole nother thing you're asking for.
Mm. Well, that's truly one of the reasons that Laurentum exists. So, I'd love to find ways to help you all and Nap thrive with sponsorships and brand partnerships and so on because they are complicated and yet they can make such a huge impact with community building and being able to do cool stuff. So
Yeah,
let's
and
talk.
that's one of the things that I'm excited about too, about what you all are doing because there's so much out there that just people aren't taking advantage of, and there a lot of these community builders, they don't have a marketing background, they don't have a fundraising background, or like all these things that historically you've needed to go get these funds. So if there's a way to make it available and easy, and then a way to kind of educate ourselves around how to do this stuff, like that would be a huge resource. Um, and there's communities that are way bigger than ours that probably could use these things tomorrow. Which, yeah, I'm excited to learn more about for sure.
Mm. Agreed. Yeah. I mean, as you said, was it hardworking generalists or
Hmm.
high functioning generalists of that even in a community building first year startup phase, most people wouldn't have had experience with sponsorships and how to navigate that and funding and so on. So, um, may that change. May that change.
Yeah, absolutely. The moment that gets easier, um, then I think that's going to unlock a lot of things for these great communities that maybe right now don't have the resources that they need, but with something like this could skyrocket or could take off much faster.
Yeah, we see from the communities that we've spoken about that sponsorship and brand partnerships is something that's quite intimidating. And then also people who want to build community but haven't necessarily had experience with event management or event production and actually running in-person events.
Mhm.
Is there any tips or insights you have of how to do that as ideally easily as possible
Yeah.
while also creating a place for people to gather and to belong?
Yeah, so the sponsorship piece I think we talked about, it's hard. And I don't have a fundraising background. So tips and tricks maybe is just like if you don't ask, you won't get, right? So like the first thing is to maybe figure out target who you want to go after and then actually say something. But in terms of event planning, we've gotten better over time. And I've taken a lot of my corporate experience over the years, like my product background, on like, okay, what does a product roadmap look like? And if we want to launch on this date, let's work backwards. So that is what we've kind of over the last maybe year and a half, we've kind of templatized this, and now we have like a process for it. And I would encourage anyone who's wanting to put on events work in this way because we often underestimate how long something takes, right? You
Mm.
may think, oh, a social post, I can put that together in like an hour and then I'll get it posted. 5 hours later, you're like still trying to figure out, oh, I don't know if this graphic is just right. I still need the interview. Like, I need a headshot. They haven't sent me their headshot yet. Like, all these things can go wrong. And if you don't have a plan, if you're not doing this ahead of time, then you do it all last minute and then you don't have enough time to invite people. So I would say definitely have a roadmap for each event, just a template you use. So, like, for example, what we use is if we have an event, say, um, November 1st, we would say the first teaser stuff should go out maybe 5 weeks ahead of time. So we'll start to seed some stuff into social media, um, and then 5 weeks out, just like quick previews. And then 4 weeks out, we'll send a little bit more. 3 weeks out, even more intense, and then 2 weeks out is like the hard push. 2 weeks and 1 week out, it's the hard push. That being said, you need content for all of that. So if you're wanting to have like we do a lot of events at AAPI owned businesses here. And so me and the marketing director will go out and we'll conduct like on-site interview. We'll shoot some B-roll, which is like just like footage of the place. Um, and then we'll send out like we'll create these mini commercials for the event. So if you want to do that, you got to go 8 weeks before your event. So you can start to see, right? Like, and if you know you're gonna shoot 8 weeks in advance, you need a like a brief, like what is the goal of this event? What are we trying to focus on? All that. So like, you know, 9 weeks out or so, you need to have set a plan on like what this event is going to be, who's going to attend, like all those things. So for if you're in the corporate world, if you're a product person, you need your spec, like your product roadmap. And that is going to be your source of truth when you're putting these things together. So event planning is difficult when you don't have a plan, but if you can put together this roadmap ahead of time, it saved you huge amounts of time, saved you headaches, saved you scrambling. We need this, we need that, we need this, we need that. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice. And find the venues early. Um, like venues are a hard thing to find. So that's the other thing I'd say. Like if you are just starting, go to places that already know who you are. So like if you're a bike community and you always meet up at like this restaurant, partner with the restaurant. Have your first event there. It's like low hanging fruit. They already know who you are. They know like you come frequently. Like start with places you know and then expand from there.
Love that. Based on existing relationships.
Yeah, and use the skill set you have. So I have a product roadmap skill set and creative development skill set. I just applied it to event planning.
Is there a particular format to this event planning guide or software or any bells or whistles that you recommend or
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, if you've been in a startup, Google Sheets are your best friend. So we don't have any. I don't know that there's a CRM that like does great for community building, but we just do it. We manage everything through Google Sheets and Google Docs. So we just have our calendar events down the left column, and then all the dates that things need to be completed. And that's the thing that we usually have done by October, November
for the following year?
for the following year. Yeah, we
Yeah.
truly run it like because we are the entire board has worked like at some pretty big companies, um, or at least well-established companies who've done annual plans before. So we all have adopted this annual plan style of working.
Sounds like y'all are a good team and work similarly.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice, and I mean that's part of it, right? Like finding people that are like you. So that's why it was very easy for me to join this board because I'm like, oh, it's just like one, it's just like being at work again. Um, but now I also there's shortcuts because it's with other API folks who kind of have similar backgrounds. We're trying to accomplish the same things. We're all walking in the same direction, so it makes it much easier.
Sounds very satisfying.
Yeah, it's been fun.
I I want to ask you one question about that before we shift to rapid fire questions. Is what is the in moments of doubt, what is the thing that keeps you showing up? And you could speak for you and the whole board, perhaps, or for yourself personally, but how do
Yeah,
you keep showing up for now?
it goes back to the reason why I started in the first place. If we don't do it, who will? And if and there's too many like you are in the coaching world, there's too many toxic work cultures, one, and there's too many work cultures that will promote you but not train you. They'll say, "Hey, you're good at that thing. You must be good at leading the people that do that same thing." And it's just not true. So for me, the reason why I keep coming back is because one, I love this community. I want to see this community thrive, but I also feel like if they don't get it from people that look and sound like them, where are they going to get it from? Who's going to invest in them if their companies aren't investing in them now? And that's a big reason why they come to us is because they're not feeling that investment from wherever it is they're at now. That's missing from their lives. So if we don't do it, who will? And this gap will just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that's why I show up. I want to see people succeed. I want to see people create the lives that they want on their terms. And so that's why I keep showing up.
I'm so glad you're doing this community building, and I'm so glad that the Las Vegas chapter of NAP exists.
So me too. It also gives me a sense of belonging. So
Mm.
selfishly.
Selfishly, unselfishly.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, it's really nice to hear you speak about NAP and see you light up.
Yeah, it's my parents were big in community also growing up in the Bay Area. So they instilled in me this sense of community. And I don't think I really realized it. Like I was always helping them out, but I don't think I really realized it until, I had my own family and I was older and like what that really meant. Um, and so now like I don't mind. I don't feel like it's taking anything away. It's anything that's additive.
You saying that makes me want to just open a whole nother hour-long conversation about community and connection and in this time and era and family and the ways we're socialized around communities. But I'm going to pause there and practice restraint and shift into rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Do you feel ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Couple of quick questions. Question one, how do you manage communication with your community?
So the number one channel is email. And then after that, actually, it's text. So as a board, we do a lot of texting and we text the members that connect with us most. And that's different for all. And then, of course, we're across socials. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram,
Hmm. Which platform is most active?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn for sure,
LinkedIn.
because we're a professional development community. So LinkedIn is absolutely our most active platform.
Oh, and what was your major unlock to go from 0 to 1 with the Las Vegas chapter?
So for me, it was just showing up. Um, and taking a leap. So that was a major unlock for me. It's just showing up, taking the leap, and fighting all my hesitations because all those hesitations were just fears. And once I was able to get past that, I was able to really contribute and help the community continue to grow.
Hmm. I'm sure that's very relatable for many people. And then third question is, how do you get people excited about attending an event?
So one, I'll be there. I don't know how that gets people excited, um, but it's an opportunity for them as the API community to connect with like-minded professionals. That's really it. And if you've been missing this thing in your life, then this is an opportunity to kind of fill that gap that's been missing. And usually when I pitch it that way, like, hey, you get to meet more people like us, more people like you, and who all want to continue to grow and get better and improve, that usually gets people excited. And then if it's not that, it's like, oh, there'll be karaoke or there'll be like a robot you can drive. Like the actual event itself is often entertaining.
Hmm. I really appreciate that combination of professional skill development and fun.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta have some
Often they
fun.
don't coexist.
Yeah, you gotta have some fun. I mean, what's life without fun? I mean, that's one
Agreed.
of the like without joy and fun, like what's the purpose? Like why are we here?
Agreed. Yeah. You talking about heart-centered and fun? I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Challenge so hard is one thing, but challenging can be fun still. So if you reframe it in your mind as it's not hard, it's just challenging, and you'll be better on the other side of it. And that's all you can ask for.
Hmm. Love that. Okay, fourth and final question. How have you grown your team?
It's been fantastic. So I love this question because this year we've grown a lot and it's been organically. So because we've been growing as a community and because we've been putting on more events, just naturally more people are asking how they can contribute more. So we have definitely picked up a couple new board members, but we've also picked up a handful of like full-time volunteers. They'll probably eventually be board members, but right now we're building out the marketing team, we're building out the partnerships team. So the better events and the more belonging sense of belonging you create that we've done this year, more people are gonna say, well, how can I help? So it's just been organic, just by again showing up, adding value, and creating that sense of belonging has had people step up and volunteer to do more for us.
Mm. I've got a second part to that question then from what you shared is if people are showing enthusiasm of wanting to be involved, how do you define roles and delegate well?
Yeah, so we look at what things they're interested in and not necessarily the things they're good at. So those can be two different things, right? So in some cases, some people are interested at putting on events, but they're not event planners. They're not like they don't have that background, but they like the idea of reaching out to venues and like looking at the space, seeing what we can do with the space. So yeah, absolutely. If that's something you're interested in, go for it. Like we'll help you build that skill set and then you can put that in resume, you can use that at work or whatever, right? So that's one way. And the other way is if they want to refine, like for marketing, we have folks who've been either in their job or for whatever reason kind of pigeonholed into one form of marketing. We offer an ability to expand that. Do you want to get into social marketing? Do you want to get more into production? You want to do some of the shoots? Do you want to do some of this stuff? Like however you want to grow, like that's what we're here for. That's one of our pillars, right? Professional development.
Mm.
So if you want to align with what you do well, great. If you want to expand, that's great too.
I really appreciate your focus on what people are excited about rather than just what they're already good at.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I learned early at Zappos, right, is happy employees are productive employees. So if you can find ways to bring joy through, even if it's through work to people, and we talked about it, 2 minutes ago, if you can find ways to inject joy into what they're doing, they'll work harder and they'll volunteer to do it because we're a volunteer organization.
Is there any final thoughts or reflections or things that you haven't shared that would feel incomplete not to before we finish?
Uh, I think we covered a lot, but I think the one thing I would say is if anyone out there is even thinking about starting a community or, you know, doesn't know where to start, the first thing I would say is what's holding you back, and the second thing I would say is ask for help. I mean, that's the biggest thing in any, and that piece of advice goes for anything. If you're struggling with something or you don't know where to start, ask for help. There's too many resources out there for people to feel like they can't get help, and especially with what you all are building, there will be more help for people out there. So it's not um, why why start it. It's more like why haven't you started it? Like what's stopping you? And what's something you can do today to get the ball rolling? Uh, whatever the friction is, usually it's just the story that we tell ourselves.
Hmm. Spoken like a true coach.
Right.
Well, thank you, Rico. Such a pleasure to chat with you and to hear about NAP and all the amazing things that you're doing and sharing so generously your insights and wisdom that I'm sure many people will really learn from and appreciate as they navigate their own community building. So, thank you so much.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate you taking the time as well. And it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. All right.